us. We are pleased to be hosting a series of Lunch and Learn sessions throughout the month, delivered by experts who conduct research in the field, who are practitioners. And today's session, the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign is the first in our series of webinars this month. So before we get started, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Marilyn McQueen Ferguson Center for Family Violence Research resides on the unsurrendered and unceded territorial lands of the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples. This territory upon which we conduct our work is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which the Wolastoqey and Mi'kmaq peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of the lands and resources, but in fact recognized the Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. It is important that we recognize this as we work together to decolonize our thoughts and our practices, and that the land upon which we live nurtures and protects us, our families, our friends, as well as the colleagues and students that are connected to us. We encourage everyone to dedicate themselves today and every day to the critical task of truth and reconciliation as we move forward together. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available on our website following the session. It will take us a few days to get it up and available. But I would ask, I guess everyone's microphones are turned off because this is a webinar function of Zoom and there are no videos other than with the presenter. So we have allocated time following the presentation for a Q&A with the presenter, and that portion will not be recorded. So, we encourage people to bring forward questions, and you can do that through using the Q&A portion at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the Lunch and Learn, we will conduct a quick evaluation. We'll provide a link in the chat. So I would now like to introduce our presenter today. Autumn Locke is a consultant at the Crime Prevention and Program Development Branch in the Department of Justice and Public Safety. Autumn is a social worker and a Master of Social Work student at St. Thomas University. Autumn oversees the province's Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign, aimed at educating New Brunswickers on intimate partner violence, how to help, and where to find help. Autumn has been living and learning on unceded Wolastoqey territory since 2005 and currently resides in Fredericton along the Wolastoq River, which we also know as the St. John River. And she has, I guess she's living there with her cats, Alfredo and Dave. Anyway, Autumn, thank you so much for joining us today to give us a presentation about the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign. Over to you.
Thanks, Sheila. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Love Shouldn't Hurt's webinar for Family Violence Prevention Month. First, I'd like to thank the MMFC for the opportunity to chat with you all today about intimate partner violence and the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign. Like Sheila said, my name is Autumn Locke, and I like to position myself as a settler on the lands of the Wolastoqey peoples. I am a social worker, and I wish to acknowledge the violence that the social work profession has done and social workers have done in Canada. I'd like to acknowledge the violence that social workers and the profession of social worker has done to Indigenous folks across Turtle Island. We're here today to talk about intimate partner violence, and I would be remiss if I did not call to attention that Indigenous women are more likely to experience intimate partner violence than their non-Indigenous counterparts as a direct result of colonial violence and settler violence. November is Family Violence Prevention Month in New Brunswick, and I just wanted to contextualize that I'll be talking about intimate partner violence today. Specifically, but family violence refers to a broad range of offenses, including child abuse and neglect, elder abuse, and intimate partner violence, among others. For the purposes of today's webinar, I'll be talking about New Brunswick Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign, why the campaign was created, and then I'll provide you with a practical introduction to intimate partner violence. I'll end today's webinar by providing you with some resources and a call to action should you want to get involved with the campaign. So the Roundtable on Crime and Public Safety identified intimate partner violence as a priority area for action for New Brunswick because intimate partner violence is one of the most serious, complex, and dangerous issues that we face in our province. One of the One of a number of initiatives set in motion to prevent and respond to intimate partner violence was the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign. Love Shouldn't Hurt is an umbrella campaign with many partners and volunteers who guide the direction of the campaign and who promote the campaign and where to find help in their communities. The campaign was made to challenge some of the myths associated with IPV and to reframe intimate partner violence as a serious social issue, to get everyone on the same page of what constitutes intimate partner violence, and to help people understand that even if you're not a trained professional in responding to IPV, you can still help someone who's experiencing it. I'll be discussing each objective in a little bit more detail now. So step one in reframing intimate partner violence. Many people think that intimate partner violence is an individual or family problem. People often fear intervening because it's not their business or because they might not know how to help. Many people experience intimate partner violence alone behind closed doors. Fear of their partner or how a family or friend might respond, as well as societal shame are often barriers to seeking help. Coercion, gaslighting, and threats are often used to isolate the victim or survivor, which makes it even more difficult to find help. Intimate partner violence is a serious social issue, not a personal or an individual issue. Too many people across New Brunswick, across Canada, and the world are experiencing violence in their homes. Structural risk factors like alcohol and substance use, witnessing or experiencing violence in childhood, economic stress, practices that support inequity, gender inequity, and patriarchal norms that support violence against women contribute to intimate partner violence. One of the ways that we together can help end intimate partner violence is by talking about it as a social issue rather than an individual issue. Intimate partner violence doesn't happen because of something the victim or survivor has done, and being subjected to violence is never your fault. The statistics around intimate partner violence show that it's not an individual problem. In Canada, every 6 days, a woman is killed by her intimate partner. New Brunswick has the highest rate of police reported intimate partner violence in the Atlantic provinces. More people are killed by their partners in New Brunswick than any other Atlantic province, and more family-related murder-suicides happen in New Brunswick than anywhere else in Canada. When we talk about IPV, we usually use gendered language, and we recognize that violence in relationships happens to men and people across the gender spectrum. However, intimate partner violence happens much more frequently to women, and there is a greater likelihood of serious harm and lethality when the victim is a woman. Intimate partner violence can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter what your social status is, your race or ethnicity, your religion, your gender, sex, sexual orientation, or the type of relationship that you're in. You can be married, divorced, separated, common law, or dating. Intimate partner violence, though, is still a gendered issue, which makes it important to talk about as a gendered issue. So I have a little bit of information on the slides up here. 80% of victims in Canada, police reported intimate partner violence are women. Women are much more likely than men to be victims of intimate partner homicide. In 2011, more than 6 times as many women were killed by a current or former spouse as men. In DV situations, or domestic violence situations, women are twice as likely as men to be injured, 3 times as more likely to fear for their lives, twice as likely to suffer serious injury, and 6 times as likely to seek medical attention. 7 in 10 people who experience family violence generally are women and girls. So step 2 of Love Shouldn't Hurt, our second goal, is to build a shared understanding. So that means getting everybody on the same page. In 2012, New Brunswick agreed on a shared definition of intimate partner violence. This was developed by various community agencies, government branches, and departments. This definition is now used by most people serving agencies, including police, domestic violence outreach workers, and the Domestic Violence Court in Moncton, government departments, including probation, victim service, prosecution services, and it aligns with IPV literature. It was important for New Brunswick to adopt this definition to ensure that all different sectors were using a shared definition to ensure that clients could receive appropriate services and supports. This definition is unique because it includes coercion, domination, and control, and it highlights the patterns of abuse. Being able to monitor those patterns of abuse can allow for behaviors to be tracked over time to see when violence is escalating and apply the appropriate interventions. In the past, different offenses perpetrated at different times were not always considered in those interventions and charges. This definition also includes common law folks, people who are dating, past relationships, and is not limited by heteronormative definitions of relationships. That is to say, the definition would include violence in same-sex and polyamorous relationships. So I'm going to chat a little bit about the different types of violence now. So when we talk about inter-partner violence, a lot of people immediately think of or physical violence. So physical abuse is the intent to harm someone using violence or force, and it includes making unwanted contact with the area around a person, such as throwing an object. If someone is experiencing physical violence, the signs are often visible. You might see unexplained bruises or cuts or marks. They might even have a fear of their partner, mood swings, or an aversion to any form of physical touching. It's important to note that any form of abuse can be experienced alone in isolation, but there's a greater likelihood that multiple types of abuse are being experienced at the same time. We know that IPV is more than just physical violence, so Love Shouldn't Hurt recognizes 6 broad types of violence, including sexual violence. Sexual abuse is any unwanted sexual contact when force or threats are used to get another person to engage in sexual activity. It can be unwanted touching, kissing, oral sex, or anything else where consent is not given. If someone's experiencing sexual violence, they may not want to do something, but feel like they should because their partner is trying to convince them to. Sexual terms or names can be used to insult or embarrass, being forced to dress in a revealing or sexual manner, pressuring or coercing into sexual acts without consent, the use of force, or being forced to send nude photos or texts. Words like coercion and force can seem aggressive and they may not always reflect how we feel or what we're experiencing. An easier way that I explain this to younger folks when I'm talking about it is if your partner is trying to convince or bribe you to engage in sexual acts. If the other person is intoxicated or unconscious, they can't consent. If there is not a specific and enthusiastic yes, there's not consent. Making someone feel bad or shaming them if they decline sexual advances is also not consent and is considered violence. Emotional abuse is often left out of the conversation when we talk about intimate partner violence. Emotional abuse is the intent to harm another person using words or actions to control and intimidate them. Emotional abuse varies in its cause, intensity, and effects. It is often considered to be invisible, and so it's less obvious than the other types of abuse. At first, emotional abuse may not seem like a big deal, which makes the warning signs hard to recognize, but the impacts are devastating. Some of the folks that I've talked to on my journey with Love Shouldn't Hurt over the last few years have told me that they've considered emotional or psychological impacts of intimate partner violence to be worse than physical violence. They've told me that physical wounds heal a lot easier than emotional wounds. Being able to spot these warning signs of emotional abuse can help you prevent them. So some questions to ask, does your partner make decisions for you? Is your partner insecure about your relationship when you're around others? Are they really jealous? Does your partner ignore your boundaries? Does your partner lie to you? Does your partner act possessive? Does your partner tell you that your friends and family are bad for your relationship? Another often overlooked form of violence is verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is used to gain control or manipulate someone else's thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. It is a hurtful form of communication, often using loud and offensive language. But verbal abuse can also be silent by using body language or looks. Kind of like how we know the silent treatment means you need to be quiet and you're not important enough for me to acknowledge. Some of the warning signs might include mean comments about you, your gender, your religion, what you wear. They might make fun of your ideas, your behaviors, or beliefs. If your partner makes negative comments about people, places, or things that they know you love, if your partner dismisses a remark that hurts you, they might say, "It's a joke, calm down." Or if your partner physically backs you into a corner or somewhere you cannot easily leave during an intense conversation. You may have heard of the term gaslighting before. Gaslighting is an abusive tactic used to make the victim or survivor question their own mind or their memory to build further reliance on the abusive partner. The partner who is using abuse might question the way the victim or survivor remembers things by saying, "I never said that," or "That's not how that happened." Financial abuse is often associated with older adults, but it can occur in any relationship, even youth relationships. Financial abuse is one partner having control over the other partner's access to money. This abuse is not a single event, but rather a pattern over time. Some of the warning signs include your partner suddenly becoming interested in your financial matters. They may make withdrawals or transfer money without your permission. They might suggest changes to your finances that you're not comfortable with. They could make you feel afraid to make financial decisions. They may have ruined potential employment opportunities for you, either force you to go to work or forbid you from working. They might give you an allowance or expect you to give them your paycheck. Spiritual abuse often involves attacking or putting someone down because of their spiritual beliefs or religion, or in the name of their own faith. Spiritual abuse is not limited to any one religion. Some of the warning signs are if you are being insulted for your religious or spiritual beliefs, if you are not allowed to practice your religion, so you might be prevented from attending a temple, a mosque, a sweat log, a synagogue, or a church. when your spiritual beliefs are used to manipulate, shame, or coerce you into doing something, or when your religious beliefs are used to minimize behaviors. The third goal of Love Shouldn't Hurt is promoting the belief that everyone has a role to play in ending IPV. You don't have to be a domestic violence professional, and there's no real training needed to support your friends, neighbors, coworkers, or loved ones. Here are some tangible ways that you can help someone in your life who might be subjected to violence. So first, name the abuse. Oftentimes, people might not recognize all of the forms of IPV, or they might not know what IPV is at all. When IPV is generational, some people might not even recognize that they're experiencing abuse or what they're experiencing is wrong. By naming the abuse that you're seeing, you're helping them to understand what's happening to them and taking the blame off of them. Because IPV is never the fault of the victim, make it very clear that it is not the victim's fault. If a partner who abuses can go throughout their entire day with work, friends, family, and they can refrain from being abusive in those situations, there is no excuse for the abuse towards a partner. Telling the victim that you are willing to help however you can. This can be as small as listening, helping them look for resources, going with them to appointments or to the police, giving them a place to stay, or even watching their pets. We know that pets are a large barrier to folks leaving abusive relationships. Often offer contact information for services and supports for the entire family. It may be considered child abuse for children to witness domestic violence, and that includes hearing it from another room. Children need supports and resources as soon as possible. Ask the victim about abuse in private, never in front of others. There's still a lot of societal shame around experiencing abuse. Encourage the victim to make a safety plan. We offer a template on our website, gmb.ca/violence. It's also on the next slide. This will help the victim to know who they can call, where they can go, and what they need if they're in an emergency. Sometimes when we're in that flight or flight mode, our brains aren't thinking at full capacity. So this can help plan beforehand. Public legal education and information services of New Brunswick also have a safety plan option for children. And there are a number of safety plan apps now available, such as EVO, which is New Brunswick specific, and My Plan, which is a Canadian app. And those are both available on the app stores for Android and Apple. Do not make excuse for the abusive partner's behaviors. A bad day doesn't excuse being abusive, and neither does a rough upbringing. And always keep yourself safe. Never get in the middle of an assault and call the police if there's danger. On our website, we have a ton of information for just about anything you're looking for IPV related. This is a screenshot of some of what we offer on the website. I'll point out that we have information on the emergency intervention orders. These can support a victim of IPV in staying safe. Orders can allow police to take firearms out of the home, can temporarily award the victim custody of children, or allow the victim to stay in the home without the abusive partner, among other things. The intention of these orders is to make sure that the victim feels safe and they have a chance to get back up on their feet. They can last from 1 to 6 months, but I'm hearing they generally work out to be 2 months long. There's a similar program for individuals living in First Nations communities, and that's also available on our website. We also have information about staying safe online, including how to clear your search history or your browser history, more information on how you can help, or what you might say to a victim or an abusive partner. There's also myths and facts about intimate-partner violence. We have infographics and videos. They're made for the campaign under resources. And I'll also note that we have an emergency exit button on our website. If anyone is on our website looking for resources or information and someone comes up behind them that they don't want to see, they can press that emergency exit button and it'll take them to the weather network. Especially interesting resource on our website are our service directories. So this is one for victims of abuse and was made in partnership with the Public Legal Education and Information Service of New Brunswick. This directory is a holistic approach to resources, recognizing that folks have different needs. There's information for contacting police or legal resources, medical services, trauma counseling and crisis lines, housing, food, and also clothing options. This directory contains resources from all over the province. You can navigate in the toolkit to a specific topic and then find the closest resource to you by your community. We also have a directory of services for people who use abusive tactics. The purpose of this directory is to set out helpful prevention and intervention services for abusive partners. Love Shouldn't Hurt believes that everyone has the capacity for change, but that change takes time and effort. This directory can be a first step in identifying the right people to help. Included in this directory are counseling and addiction services, workshops, legal aid, and so on. Oftentimes, it's the women who are experiencing abuse who are accessing this directory for their abusive partners. I've outlined a few provincial resources here for you if you or someone you know needs help. So CHIMO is New Brunswick's crisis line. They can be accessed 24/7 by phone, and since the start of COVID, have launched a chat and text services on their website. Sexual Violence New Brunswick, or formerly the Fredericton Sexual Assault Center, provides information, support, and counseling to those affected by sexual violence and dating violence across New Brunswick. Care can be accessed by calling 811 and will put you in contact with a nurse. Sexual assault nurse examiners are trained professionals to respond to sexual violence and are available at any hospital in the province. Family Legal Aid can provide support and answer legal questions. I've included 211, which is a live referral service. By calling 211, you can be connected with a live person who can help you find resources nearby if you don't know who to turn to. And I've added that in lieu of the transition house or the domestic violence outreach numbers because there are many numbers. So these folks would have the direct contact for those people that you need who are nearby. And as always, if you are in an emergency or there is immediate danger, call 911. The most important part of Love Shouldn't Hurt are our champions. Champions are volunteers who hold events in their communities. These are the folks who know their communities best and they know what their community needs far better than I ever would. So I've included some wonderful pictures of some of our champion events over the last few years. Love Shouldn't Hurt champions play an active role in ending IPV in New Brunswick by planning events to raise awareness about IPV, to educate community members on what IPV is, and to promote resources and services in our community. Our champions are trained and can access up to $500 to support an event, and that monies are provided by the Crime Prevention Association of New Brunswick. Champions also have access to myself and our Love Shouldn't Hurt coordinator, Kaylee, for support. If you're interested in becoming a champion of the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign, my contact information will be on the next slide. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There's also a call for champions on our website that will direct you to me. And that's the end.
Thanks very much, Autumn. That was a lot of material to go over in a short period of time. I encourage folks to post questions under the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. But I do have one question. I'd like to kind of get your thoughts around some of the statistics that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation around reporting in New Brunswick, and that we have the highest rate of reporting in all of Canada. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why you think that might be the case? Is it that it's a higher prevalence, or is it that we've been doing, that folks have been encouraging people to report, and we're removing some of the stigmas around reporting? Or what are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting question, and I think it's very complex. There's a lot of, as you mentioned, there are a lot of different factors. Are we just better at reporting and finding help? I've recently seen a statistic that I think 22% of people report domestic or family violence to the police, and there's roughly 80% of folks who don't. That's very nervous, considering that we do have some of those higher numbers in the country. How does that translate to New Brunswick? I think there's more work to be done to dig in and find out what the actual implications are. And I know that COVID has made things worse too. I was talking to some folks, and it sounds like now coming out of COVID, and even in the last year or so, the cases are more complex. People are staying longer and before they're looking for help. So things are getting more complex and more dangerous, which makes it even more difficult to work with. But I'm not sure if we're just better at reporting or not. I think that the rurality of the province plays a part in it as well. It's a little bit harder for people to find folks if they're living in places where there isn't a domestic violence outreach worker, there isn't those visible people in the community who can help, which is where I think Love Shouldn't Hurt has a role to play of getting into those communities and making ourselves known.
Right. So if the 80% who don't report, usually they're disclosing to someone. And so
Yeah.
that's why it's important for everyone to be aware of the resources and what to do in cases of a disclosure.
Right.
So hence the very important work that you're doing around the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign and making this information available to folks. I do have a few questions coming in. So one is around how have you had to change your approach due to the pandemic with the campaign? Are there things that you've been doing differently?
There have been some for the better and some not for the better. So we rely heavily on our champions to get involved in their community, and they've been really impacted because they haven't been able to get into the community, at least not in the same way. So they're doing more things on social media and more things through webinars and that type of work, which can make it difficult because many people don't have access to computers or they don't have access to reliable internet to be able to tune in. And if they're already not connected to those networks, how do they find it, right? In the first year of COVID, we seen a marked increase in our traffic on social media. I think we had a goal of increasing the campaign's reach by 25%, and we increased it by 255% just through foot traffic on our website and social media alone, which shows that there was a lot of need for it during COVID. It's just unfortunately we weren't able to get into communities. We're finding now that our champions are getting started back up again. They're starting to do more events. But during those first 2 years, we were mostly a social media campaign, unfortunately. We did have some opportunities to partner with the MMFC. We partnered with education, with some other folks to try to get those messages out to youth and their parents as well to know that there is help available. But, yeah.
Okay, thanks.